Just a few quick thoughts on Trump. I've been listening to what he's been saying. The good thing about Trump is that he says the quiet thing out loud, which allows you to get a perspective, and he's consistently been that way. Admittedly, the bit out loud is usually a lie, and that's the guy that's heading up everything, that six-time bankrupt guy. But nevertheless, you can see where his thoughts are, okay, in the middle. The lies are kind of surrounding everything, and I say that's the kind of misdirections. But I think there are some main threads, basically, just to summarize. Into things which he maybe doesn't realize. I mean, such as the damaging effects of tariffs. We know that his true intention is that you're going to disincentivize anybody selling to the US not being based in the US. And if companies are investing in the US, that's good, right? There you go, you've got some active encouragement. But even with that, say if he focused and targeted on key markets, just so he didn't destabilize the whole ship. If he did that, you could say that there was some considered thought to it. But for him to attack the whole world so that everybody is going to presumably put up their tariffs, surely that can only be incredibly damaging to everything that he's trying to achieve, right? It's got to spike prices. I mean, just Canada alone, there's a lot on the news about Canada today. And they're going to actively discourage any purchases of alcohol from the States into Canada, and they purchase lots. It's in the billions. So say if he had his allies who he protected, and there were some errant allies that he wanted to punish and bring in line, would that make sense? I think it would still be a bad idea, but you could say it made sense, and I say it was a very measured approach, you know what I mean? But if it's making everybody an enemy, what are its options? You got to think about it. I mean, there's another core principle behind all of this as well, is that I think Trump knows so little that he can't take on advice because he can't comprehend advice. So to put himself in a position, you got to imagine, say you're learning maths, say you're back in school, you're trying to learn all your weakest subject, and somebody needs to explain it to you. It makes your head hurt a little bit, and that's fine when you're a kid and you're meant to be trying to learn. But when you're the guy who's meant to know everything, maybe it's a little bit embarrassing, you know what I mean, to have to take feedback. And he probably maybe feels like he has to be an expert in all areas when nobody's an expert in all areas. You got to think about who he said that tariffs are going to be paid by. These are fundamental things that he's either lying or just doesn't understand, and I think it's both. But that goes back to he's getting his information from somebody or somewhere. If it's somebody, then it's quite sinister in as much as somebody's his puppet master and making him make these bad decisions, such as the tariffs, which are very damaging to the country that possibly he does love. I think he still does love self first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and then maybe it's Ivanka, his daughter, and then maybe his sons, maybe like a few more steps down the line, just behind money and glory and all that kind of thing. But somewhere on that list is going to be America, like way, way, way down. You know what I mean? But I just think there's either somebody who's his puppet master forcing him to do things, and he just has very naive and blunt ways and non-thoughtful ways of expressing what he's been told to do, or he actually believes it. Now, I felt for a long time that he was being forced, like there's never enough money that this billionaire can have. And I just think, well, is there somebody behind him driving him, extorting him? Still might be true, but now I think he is a willing victim of misinformation, and everything points towards Russia. He somehow doesn't understand that Russia is our enemy now. It's our historic enemy, and for very good reason. And he cannot allow them to build up strength, and he cannot allow them to gain ground, because it does matter whether you lose your allies. And guess what? One of those allies, the front line, is Ukraine. So he ain't doing none of that just for Ukraine's sake. And the reason why Ukraine's at the front of everybody's mind in Europe is because that is critical land, and that's just the beginning of what may be the end for Western Europe, this threat from Eastern Europe, otherwise known as Russia. And once Russia accumulates all that land, Russia will never be the friend of America. Russia is not the friend of America and it will never be. Russia is bothered about Russia. That is it. And that's the way it's always been. But it's not bothered about Russia in the true sense of all people being equal. It's bothered about those people at the top and maintaining power on a very fragile structure where there are people around you who have to be your sycophants. Otherwise, they'll take your place, aka old school off with the head kind of thing. And they have no loyalty to this orange idiot. It's only going to be around for, was it, just under 4 years? And even if he extended it, he's old. And whilst his plan may actually last for the 4 years or a little bit longer, however long he lives, the Russian plan will go on for eternity. Putin's been in for 25 years. Them and everybody behind Putin is of the same mind. It's of that culture. It's not of Western culture. And they just want to amass and move forwards. Just say, for instance, and I said this in a previous video, that Russia does take Ukraine, and it's on the doorstep of our European neighbours, including Finland and Poland, and they've got history with Russia. And then they have to make a decision about, well, who's going to back them? Is it going to be the fragmented nations of the West? And history tells us that we cannot always unite, or we leave it too late. We're not focused on the right things. And the fact that we're in this situation now where we're reliant on America is proof in itself. So all this is happening way too quick. Way too quick. Say if he marches into Ukraine, I think it would be a guerrilla war. And in some ways that is the saddest thing, because with the backing, we could have resisted Russia, who's taken on a lot of cost and are losing a lot of lives. And they would have to at some point step back, and whether Putin's going to last it out or not, or whether he's going to be usurped. But instead, when Russia seemed to be shaking, and surely they can't keep this thing going on, and they need to have some kind of honourable retreat, of all people, along comes the Orange Man to save the day for Russia and spout all the Russian propaganda. He was talking very recently about how somehow Putin is a victim, and he's had unfair things said about him. This is a murderous dictator. He's been in power 25 years. His opponents mysteriously fall out the windows on the top floor. His political opponents are either in prison or dead or exiled. These are the facts. So why is the President of America backing him up? But because he says so many things out loud, you have to think that he believes it, which takes us back to the injecting bleach kind of mentality. He wouldn't have said that if he didn't think it was true. He wouldn't have said about the tariffs if he didn't think that was true. He wouldn't be cutting all those jobs and gutting the government, thinking somehow that things can still work. You know what I mean? Can you imagine going into any kind of job or any government department, any single one, and then gutting it out and thinking it's still going to tick along and there won't be problems? Do you remember all those executive orders about aircraft safety? And then there was a crash the following week. Do we think there's not other near misses and lots of things which are not yet reported, which are the safeguards built into a system which now can't operate in the way that it needed to? And maybe it needed a more measured and informed way about reviewing practices and thinking what is necessary. And yes, that takes time, but that's because there has to be protections for vulnerable people. Or there are certain guarantees that things cannot go wrong for the safety of everybody. Or you can have a cavalier approach and just sack everybody regardless, which is what you've got. In America, I'm in the UK. My main worry is from the Ukraine and for the welfare of all people in a holistic sense, but definitely in the West, because at some point we might have to fight. Whereas just over a month ago, we had relative peace, even though we weren't doing enough in Ukraine, and now the world has changed. But the main point of this video is, I think that Trump is a victim of misinformation or extortion, but most likely limited intelligence and misinformation. And that's not an insult to Trump, because some people take it like I'm insult Trump and you insult them. That's not. It's actually in some ways a compliment. I mean, he still lies a lot, you know what I mean? That's still, you can't respect that. But at least you got the logic that he does talk about, as long as he feels sincere in himself, then I think that's worth something. It isn't worth a lot, but it's worth something. In which case he needs to be saved, and he's savable. As long as we can highlight a source of information which is misguiding him, we can inform him and try and uncover who's behind it. But just say if it was Russia, oh my gosh, Would it make a difference? That's the only chance. Please put your thoughts in the comments. Please try to be nice. If you disagree, that's absolutely fine, but just try and flesh it out so I understand